Good morning. Welcome to part 4 of this series. Today is an exciting day because we're actually going to deploy what we've got and put it onto Netlify and also Heroku for the backend. So let's go ahead and jump into today's lesson. So I'm going to share my screen. So let's do a recap of what we've done so far. So first week, we jumped around Node.js and API. We started, learning about Express and middleware. Week 2, we started jumping into React. We started building some of the pages. We learned about React Router. We started connecting our API into React, so getting that full stack experience. We started some styling as well. Last week, we did some authentication. So and running through some security best practices when it comes to Node.js and APIs. We learned about JWTs, which is an industry standard for authenticating tokens and client requests from the backend and the front end. And we built a little login page as well and authenticated some of the requests that we're using. So this week, before we get started for this week, I'm going to go through our homework. So we had updating all the secure API endpoints to make sure you cannot access them if you're not logged in, and then ensure there are no security holes if you try to read someone else's conversation. All right. So that's going to be a little bit of a tricky one, that second one, because that's going to require us to have multiple users, and we have to check if we're reading somebody else's content, which is obviously a big no-no. And then we're going to jump into deployment. So we're going to set up Websockets to have real-time communication. I'm going to show you guys what WebSockets is, why we use something like that. That allows for real-time communication and actually sending things from the server to the client instead of requesting things. So it's a different paradigm, and it actually opens up kind of like if you guys imagine, I don't know if you guys have ever done that thing where you have like a big long piece of string and 2 cans, and you're chatting to your friend at the other end. That's kind of what this is, right? That's what a WebSocket connection is you've created a constant connection where you can send things back and forth between each other. So we're going to learn how to use that to send messages through to the API. Sorry, through to the API and also to the client. So that back and forth exchange. And then we're going to deploy our API on Heroku. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. I'm going to keep it light on the DevOps side. That's a whole thing in and of itself. So I don't want to delve into too much of how we do AWS and different configurations and Docker and all that sort of stuff. We can leave that for another tutorial. I just want to keep it simple and do a simple GitHub deployment to both Heroku and Netlify. So we'll get into that later today. Cool. So do we have any questions on anything we've covered over the past couple of weeks? Anything I need to know about? Anything you guys want to share?
Hey, Tristan, just a question on the chat. Just from Jeannie, just a question about the backend.
Mm-hmm.
Are you building your own backend? My understanding is you are building your own backend using SQLite and SQLite.
Yes. So that's the whole idea behind this full stack tutorial. That's what this Node.js is. So if you have a look into the code, was it Jeannie that was asking this?
Jeannie, yeah.
Yep. So we've got these 2 packages in here, Jeannie. We've got the API, which is the Node.js, and we've got the client, which is the React. So you can go through, clone this, and have a look, and that's how these 2 fit together. So it is a full stack tutorial, and both of these packages are going to be deployed in separate locations. So this one will go to Heroku. This one will go to Netlify. For those who aren't familiar with Heroku or Netlify, Heroku is let me just open up here. Heroku is a cloud application platform. So you can publish Node.js, Ruby, Java, all these different languages. It has a really nice dashboard for you to manage your applications that you have. You can see things like resources, and you can very easily install databases. For example, if I want to attach a MySQL database, I can just click on this and then just provision that. They have all these different things for different tiers, but most of them have a free tier. And then I can simply just set up a database by pressing one button. So that's a really nice experience as a developer. I don't have to delve into setting up all this cloud database deployments and linking things together. And if anyone's ever dealt with AWS before, or anything like AWS, that stuff can get quite hairy quite quickly. So this is a very, very simple user interface friendly way to deploy and manage your resources in the cloud. So we're definitely going to stick with that today. This is for the back end. For the front end, right, we're going to use one called netlify.com. So Netlify is a similar concept, and it's just for static assets. That's what we'll be using it for today. They have some more complex things with functions and a few other features. But today we're just going to focus on just deploying through the static assets that we have. So we're going to build our React project with Webpack, and then we're going to take that distribution folder, and we're going to put that into Netlify. Now, both of these things are 100% free. So they have free tiers. Now, if you want to expand out and to have more fancy resources and uptime, so one of the caveats with the free tier of Heroku is that it has a sleep time, a mandatory sleep time, so that for a certain period of the month, it goes to sleep. And then when you make a request, it wakes up and it has a wake up time. So because our application is not a production application, I'm okay having it as a free tier. However, if you do want to upgrade it to the Dino, the minimum is $7 a month, and that will not go to sleep. So that will be up 100% of the time. Netlify is completely free. So you get automatic HTTP to HTTPS redirection. You can put your own domains into it. It's a really nice system. Cool. So does that answer your question, Susie? Not Susie, Jeannie?
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our homework. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that we go through all of our API endpoints and add that middleware that we have to them for the authentication. All right. So I'm going to go through into API client, zoom in just for you guys to see. A little bit too much. Is that visible to you guys? All right, so we're going into
That's
API.
good.
Oops, I just accidentally moved it there. API, we're going into routes, and then we've got. Okay, so we've got a couple of ways of doing this. I could actually go through each of these endpoints and add the middleware in here, but we've actually set this up in a better way. So where we're routing this, see here, where we're adding it to the app. Oh, I've already added middleware authentication. Okay, great. Well, we don't need to worry about that first part then. So just to recap, I could go through and add the middleware, say, for every single route in here. I could say, middleware auth, and then it will do this one, and I have to do that for each and every one. But the benefit of using a router that we've got here is that when I mount the router, all I have to do is pass it in before I add the router in. So that's handled that for us, which is good. Now keep in mind that you don't do that for the auth route. That's because this auth route needs to be public. And this has the endpoints like logging in, logging out, that sort of stuff. Cool, so we're actually ahead of ourselves with that, which is good. So the second part was ensuring there are no security holes if you try and read somebody else's conversation. So this is going to be a little bit of a tricky one. Let's think about how we're going to do this, right? So the first thing we need to do is, I suppose when we're fetching the conversations, currently what we're doing in messages is we're just listing all of them. For example, where are we? Get. So you see here, we're doing a find all, right? Now, that's just not acceptable. We can't do this because if we have two different users, then I'll be able to see somebody else's conversations. We can't have that. So what we need to do is when we request this, we need to check the JWT and the user ID that we have stored in the JWT, and then compare that to see if I have access to this conversation. In fact, when we query it, we're actually going to filter in this. So the first part is, let's just do a little bit of a recap on the JWT stuff. So where do we have that stored? Authentication. So you see here, when we successfully authenticate our JWT, we're actually storing the user as we've decrypted it. Just add a little comment here. Decrypt the JWT and store on the express response. So the beautiful thing about this was res.locals. We can actually store anything we want on this. And this allows us to use this user in future pipes down the pipeline. So remember this picture here. If we store something on res.locals here, in all the subsequent middleware, we can actually use the same information, which is very handy for us. Because now we can use this user and this user ID in here. So let's just test that this is working first. So I'm going to go log response.locals.user, like this. So let me just start up my yarn dev to start. Okay, so that's running for us, which is good. Load up Insomnia. So we have conversations. Let's just list these conversations. No JWT supplied. So for those who are using something like Insomnia or what's the other one? Postman. They have some authentication settings. I'm going to use the bearer token format. And the way we do that is token like this. And the prefix is, remember, is bearer. Space. Invalid JWT, so I just have to log in again. Not sure where that came from. Oh, so there's my token. Now the token should get put into here. No, it's not. Wonder why that is. Let's see if it's working on our client. Someone chatting, they might have a solution to this. Someone's asked, does anyone know if there will be a new code mentoring workshop starting in the coming weeks? I just joined for the first time today. Didn't realize how this was structured. Hey, Andrew. There will be other ones. We run stuff every week. So stay tuned for...
Tristan, you got muted.
Thank you. We also run a webinar on Wednesdays as well. So stay tuned for that. So we have lots of things going on, Andrew. So cool, let's just test this client. I'm not sure why I can't log in at the moment. What port do we have that running on? Okay. Okay, so if I go to login, I have Bruce, secret is the password. Okay, so logging in is working. We are getting these conversations. Must just be something inside my Insomnia. No worries, we'll just use the client for now. So that's making this conversations request, and we should see here this user is coming through. So that's working. That's what this this part here is. So the next part that we need to do is limit this conversation. So what I'm going to do is actually create another user. Have that post create user. And we'll call this, say, Joker. also have the same password. LBT supplied. Token is going to be the API token. Okay, so we've got a second user now, which is good. So we can actually start testing these. I think we also need a way to add a user to a conversation as well. So I don't think we've got through that part. So let's have a look at our model for conversation. That's right. So we have the user conversation as the joining table between the two, and then we have the conversation itself. So we need a way to add a user to a conversation. So we probably need to create a new API endpoint for this. And then the second thing we need to do is when the first person creates a conversation, so when I create a conversation, I also need to add myself as the joining table in here. So why don't we go ahead and do that first? So, all right, conversation create post. Okay. So we also need to create this joining table. I might create a new, yeah, well, we can do it here, that's fine. So SQLized TypeScript allows us to do this nicely. It's got some nice joining stuff for us. Let's just have a look through the API. Belongs to, I think, was it belongs to, has many. Yep. Was belongs to many and has, yeah, belongs to many. Belongs to many. Okay. So there should be a way inside SQLize to nicely add. Let me just find it. I think it's like this. Conversations. I think it's so once we've created this conversation, we can go conversation.add, and then I believe it's a user. So I think that's how this gets set up. Right. And then I think if we pass in the ID of the user, which we have under res.locals.user.id. I'm pretty sure that's how we set that relationship up. And we'll just do an await on that. So what that will do is when we create a new conversation, we add the current user to that conversation. Now, if we had an option in when we create a new conversation to add multiple people, we could loop over this to have multiple people in there. But for now, we're simply just gonna do it this way. So we need to actually test this. Do have a plugin that I installed for this to check our database. It doesn't seem to be showing up in my open database. There we go. Yep. Cool. SQLite Explorer. Cool. I don't know if you guys can see this here. So we're going to be using this to test the user conversations to see if this is actually coming through. I think currently this should be empty. So if I create a new conversation now, here. Oh, we actually have a way of doing that in here, don't we? In the client. I forgot we had that. Something's broken. No worries, we'll fix that up later. Let's just do it through here. Create conversation. Let's just call this user test. Add that as the bearer. Cool, so we've added our conversation. Now, hopefully, fingers crossed, we come back here. There we go. This worked. So now we've created we've joined this user to this conversation. We said this user belongs to this, right? That's good. That's what we want. So now what we need to do is lock down the conversations to only be viewed by those who have access to it. So when we're accessing any of these things, actually, we need to have that check. So what we might do is we might add some middleware to all of these. Yeah, we'll do it. Let me just think about this. They've all got conversation ID. So we should be able to reuse that. Yeah, that should work. Cool. So let's create that. We're going because all of these routes share the same conversation ID. We should be able to extract out the middleware to use that conversation ID, which is good. So let's call this limit or auth conversation. So export const middleware, call it convo. It takes in the request, the response, and we'll type it with TypeScript using this request handler from Express. Remember, to type something in Express, you use the colon, then the type name. And the reason we do that is just so that now in TypeScript, this knows what type of objects these requests and responses are. So we have access to it. So we know we're going to have the conversation ID from the request parameters. Let's just go ahead and grab that here. So this is the conversation ID equals request.params. Just going to pull that in. Then we need to check this conversation. So we also got the user. So const user equals request.params. Sorry, not request. Response.locals.user.id. Let's do this. User ID. So now what we want to do here is we want to compare to see if the user has access to this conversation. So we're going to look up user conversation dot find one where, and let's just check the exact syntax that we have for user conversation. We've got user ID and conversation ID. So we should be able to use these exactly. Where user ID, like this, and conversation ID. I think we've used a capital in this one. We haven't used a capital in the other one. So unfortunately, we'll have to, should probably standardize that. So what this is going to do is this is going to check that there's an entry that this user essentially has permission to this conversation. So we're going to await const exists equals. Make sure to make this asynchronous. Log exists. Let's just for now log that. And then of course we need the next function because this is not a terminating endpoint. Next. Now, simply, we're going to do the same thing we did with the authentication, except we're going to add it on here. We can't do this on the route on the base route here, because if you look, we've got this post conversation, And obviously that doesn't have this conversation ID. So the middleware does not apply to this. So unfortunately, we're going to have to add it to each of the routes, except this one. So I'm going to import that here, middleware convo. I'm just going to copy and paste this for all of the routes except the create one. Does that make sense, guys? What we're doing here? Any questions so far? Cool. Okay, let's just add a little comment. Make sure user cannot access conversation and not a part of. So that's what this will do. Okay. So let's go ahead and load up the conversations. Conversations list. Great. Now in the API, should hopefully have seen something. All right, we didn't. We've got a slight TypeScript error there. Not sure exactly what that was. Try that again. Okay, so this is not working. Are we logging anything from? We are. It's our log. Conversations. Middleware convo. Just going to put in a bunch of logging statements to make sure it's doing the right thing. Okay, so that's not even the wrong one. Okay, there seems to be something wrong with my router. Maybe we'll figure this out. Okay, so that is working. Ah, I didn't add it to this one. Apologies, Tim. Small oversight. Okay, so something's gone wrong. Let's have a look. Log, checking user permissions. Done. Okay, so this is not working. It's hanging there. Wonder why. Has invalid undefined value. Okay. So, that's because this doesn't belong on the conversations one. We have to get a individual one. That makes sense. So there's going to be two routes in here that we don't add that to. This only applies to the individual ones. Apologies for that. So let's go ahead and get an individual conversation. So we'll grab this ID here. And if we just go duplicate conversation, just pass in this ID. All right, great. So we can see here that it's returning null. All right, that's what we want. So when this returns null, the user does not have permissions. So put this in here. If not exists, we're going to go next, new error, user does or you do not have permission to that conversation. Like this. I'll check the chat because I'm seeing a couple of people chat away in here. VS Code. Yeah. Ah, yes, it's IDE. I could run an entire session on VS Code plugins. I have so many of them installed. You can see here, quite a few plugins installed. So I could certainly give you guys some tips on that. Maybe on a beginner Wednesday, I can show you guys some of the plugins that I like. Cool. So let's try this again. This should hopefully give us an error. You do not have permissions to that conversation. Fantastic. So what about that conversation that we just created that should be the most recent one? User test. So this hopefully should pass. So if we try and get this one, excellent. So that means we have now locked it down to the user when we're getting the conversations. Now that doesn't do anything for the messages. So we can do the messages next. So if we delve into messages, router, how is that working? Create a message. I thought that should have a link to the conversation somehow. Is that perhaps on the message itself? Conversation ID, yes. So we're going to do a similar thing here in the messages. Let me just post this up for you guys as well. This is the conversations router. I'm going to put this in Slack on the web chat. This one here. So this is the conversations router. And then the middleware that I'm using is this auth conversation. There you go. So that should have both of those there for you guys. And then what we're going to do is do the same check, except when we're creating the messages. We're actually going to do it just beforehand. Let's just log these errors, these logs. So what I'm going to do is, because we're reusing this code, I'm actually going to put it into a little library. Create a lib and go check user permissions or user conversation. Let's export check user conversation or convo. Just call that convo for short. And pass in the user ID to string. Conversation ID, which is also a string. Export const. And then we're just going to copy and paste this code. Instead of next, we're going to go throw. Like this. Cool. Conversation. Make that asynchronous. Otherwise, return true. Okay, great. So check user conversation. And we're just going to replace this here with the user ID and the conversation ID. So let's just check that this is working. This should pass. And this should fail. No, it's not failing. I think that's because we're throwing the error here. We need to have the await. So here's a good thing for you guys to know, right? The reason why this did not fail, right? This should fail because we're actually passing a conversation we don't have access to. The reason why it doesn't, can anybody tell me? Why is this passing? Any guesses?
Is it like because this is asynchronous and
yeah,
and it doesn't have time to actually authenticate?
Exactly. That's exactly the reason. So what's happening is this is asynchronous. I think that was Rajat, right? So that. So Rajat was right in that this gets called, and then this gets called. Remember, this is asynchronous. This might take a couple of milliseconds to resolve itself, and then we throw the error. But by the time that's happened, we've already moved on to the next thing. So that's why there's passes. So to get around that, we just need to add the await. And that should hopefully. So this isn't working because we're throwing the error here, but we're not passing it to the next error. So what we need to do here is to try. If you have the error, make sure we pass the error in Express, like this. That way it will gracefully handle it for us. There we go. Cool. So that's the reason why we took this out. I took this out into a separate separate file. So that now in the messages, we can check it in here. So we can go check user conversation. It'll be request.body. This is going to be the conversation ID. Response.locals.user.id, like this. Same thing. So this will throw an error, and then we'll catch it and do the same thing we're doing in the other one, just here. So let's try this. So this is the ID of a conversation we don't have access to. Then we create a message. Let's try here. We paste this. Into ABT supplied. Great. So it is working. That is exactly what we want. So I think from our homework perspective, what have we got? Ensure there are no security holes if we try and read somebody else's conversation. So I think this is all working now. I think all of the security is implemented that we need for the initial small stuff that we've got, which is good. We should probably lock down users somehow. Are we going to use the unstated next you mentioned last week? Yes, Susie, we certainly can. We're gonna jump into WebSockets, I think, now. So that's a good use case for unstated next. Before I do that, I just want to make sure that everyone's across what we've done. Let's just look at our Git history and see what we've changed. So we've added this library to make sure that we compare the user against the conversation. We've got authentication conversation that we're adding to each to make sure the user doesn't access the conversation. We've also added that as the middleware to the router. And we've also made sure that you can't add a message or send a message to a conversation that you don't want.
Interesting on that one there is that no longer dangerous? So you have a comment, this is dangerous.
Technically, it probably is. What we should be doing, because we're still passing in this content as a string like this, what we probably should be doing is checking this string for like SQL injection,
okay,
and various other things. That's a whole topic in itself. But for now, or another basic one is that you don't just put in whatever body you've got. You take out all the individual properties and then put them into the model. So instead of just going request.body, you might do const, what have we got? Content, user ID, and conversation ID equals request.body. And then instead of just pass, and then you pass them in like this. So this is technically safer. And the reason why is because I think SQLize will throw errors for this, but just in case, if there is a way for somebody to submit an extra piece of data that doesn't belong on this, it might cause problems or an error or something. So this technically is safer. It's just an extra step. So we can do that. We'll remove that for now. So just so you guys know, like example of safer database client data. There's probably some other steps you should do in between those two as well. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna add this to GitHub. Before I do, I just want to fix this bug that we're having on the chat app. So I'm getting a 401 from conversations, invalid JWT. Okay, so we probably need to handle this gracefully. This is telling me that the JWT that I used is out of date. So what I'm going to do is just remove that. We don't currently have a way of handling this inside the client. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all the stuff that I have in local storage, and then go to login. So Bruce at Wayne.com. Secret was the password. Great. Okay. So getting an error with loading our conversations. Okay. The reason why is because when we first set up this this database, we weren't adding the users in. So I should be able to access this one, but these two technically I don't, because that's incomplete data. So what I might actually do is in the database conversations. I don't know if I can delete it through this. I'm going to grab these IDs and delete them from here. Conversation. Just so we don't get confused as to. And then we'll get into the unstated and okay, this is fine. We'll just leave it for now. Realistically, we should probably delete the database and restart everything, but that's fine. Cool. So I'm going to add this to Git, and then we'll get started on WebSockets and unstated. Cool. So feature as the API, auth conversations. Cool. So that is on Git for you guys to have a look. All right. Before we do that, I'm just going to give you guys a 5-minute break to go to the bathroom or get a glass of water. We'll come back at 11 o'clock, and then we'll jump into WebSockets and unstated on the front end.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Tristan.
No worries. We'll stop sharing for a second. Are we following this along so far, team?
Yeah. It's pretty I find it pretty self-explanatory, but just implementing it as well, just having someone go through it really does help.
Yeah, certainly. Just takes it from that I kind of know how to do it to I know how to do it. Yeah. And then there's another level of that when you actually do it yourself as well. You actually write it. So it actually emphasizes that the learnings and deepens them for you.
Yeah, I think Sijan has a question. He says, "Does res locals user save information separately for?"
That's a great question, Sijun. Sijun, is that how you pronounce it? Sijun. So that is how Express works. So let me just do a little screen share. You guys can see this screen. So
yeah,
this is how Express works. Is that any request that comes in has a new pipe associated to it, and every single time we create a new pipe, we're looking up the user through the JWT and storing it just for this pipe. And then as soon as we send something, all that pipe gets destroyed. That doesn't exist anymore. So this is how JWT works. it's not using sessions. Right? There is no. This is what essentially we call what's it called? A stateless API or stateless backend. In that the backend, I can destroy the backend and spin it back up again, and the client would not know the difference. There's no sessions, there's no storage, there's no variables, global variables, or anything stored on the backend. Now, what are the benefits of this approach? Right? Well, what this allows us to do is spin up these APIs in all around the world and many different data service and different countries and different areas and different cities, and none of them have to have communication between each other. And the client doesn't care. The client doesn't know which one it's talking to. It just sends a request. So you don't get issues with sharing sessions across different API servers and whatnot. So this is a very popular way of building APIs now. Is stateless. In fact, there's, I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's 12 laws of backend or security. There's something 12-factor app. So I'll paste this in Slack. So this is kind of a go-to checklist for. It was actually built by Heroku. This checklist, and this is essentially considered to be good quality backend services. So there should be exactly one code base for the deployed service. All dependencies should be declared. So a lot of these things we actually get automatically from using Node. For example, all the dependencies in Node.js are installed in package.jn, which is nice. Config. So we're not really going to get too much into this, but having a way to use different config files depending on what server environment, and the actual code itself doesn't contain any configuration. So this is things like database credentials and whatnot. Backing services, build and release. So it should have like something like a Circle CI pipeline or a Travis or something like that. Applications should be deployed as one or more stateless processes with persistent data stored on a backing service. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that it's stateless, in that it doesn't store the state on the server itself. It's stored somewhere like in Redis or in the database or whatnot. You guys can have a look through all of this. You've got logging and admin processes and various other things, but this is 12-factor. This is considered to be the go-to standard for building good quality backend services and APIs. So have a look through that yourself. I highly recommend it. Most of these things, if you've been around the dev world for a while, most of these things will just kind of be good practice that you do automatically. Do you have the link to GitHub for the code? Yes, I do. So if you go to GitHub and then go to code mentoring, so code-mentoring, and then it's webinar chat app. So I'm going to paste this in here. Cool. Say your name just right. Good to know, Sejun. Where are you from originally? It's a cool name. I like it. Sejun. South Korea. Currently in Canada. Excellent. Cool, guys. All right, let's get back into it. So we've set up, we've done the homework. We've set up all the authentication. Let's get set into WebSockets and unstated. So let me explain why we need something like unstated. Okay. So we remember last week, and I think Tamoya pointed out a good hack for showing the new conversations. But when we create a new conversation like this, right? Test, create this, it goes to this, right? It goes to the conversation, but it doesn't show up in the UI. Now, this is a pretty common problem in front-end development, in that we create something or we change something And we want this to change all across our application. In fact, this is one of the reasons why something like React exists. This dynamic nature is where JavaScript shines. It's the reason React exists in the first place. There have been other things before it. So we used to use things like Backbone or jQuery or Angular, God forbid Angular 1 back in the day, for those who know what I'm talking about. There's a whole bunch of front-end libraries that exist to solve this problem for us. It's dynamic updating, using some kind of model system in the UI to refresh itself, right? Because you don't want to manually go through everything in your application and update this and update that and update this. So it becomes a bit chaotic. Now, when React first came out, there was a huge push for a library called Redux, right? There still is. I hate Redux. I'll explain why I don't like Redux. It is huge. I think the file size for Redux is massive. It has a whole bunch of bloat to it. The API is incredibly complicated. They need a whole documentation website to use it. You've got reducers and middlewares and all this crazy stuff. You've got actions, reducers, stores. I don't want you guys to think about this. If you know Redux and you're already comfortable with it, that's fantastic. You do you. I want to introduce a very, very simple library for solving our state problem. Okay? It's called Unstated. Next. I'll put this in the webinar chat app. So I think the total amount of lines in the source code is, well, it's 38 lines. There you go. As opposed to what we had in Redux, which is a huge library with documentation and whatnot. Go to GitHub. See how many lines of, like, they've got all this stuff in here, guys. Right? Versus this.
So Tristan, does Redux do a whole bunch of other things, and this one is just doing exactly what you need?
I think they've added a bunch of extra stuff to it. Realistically, I haven't found a need for it. I really don't like Redux. The other problem I have with Redux is to change something, you have to change it in about 3 or 4 different places. So it gets very complicated very quickly. Now, recently, React has come out with something called React Hooks. And we've been using that already. With the hooks, it also came out with React Context. So React Context is godsend. This is a way of wrapping your entire application inside React Context. And what you can do is you can listen any individual component, provided that's wrapped inside the provider, can get the context information. Now, this is very, very useful because what it allows us to do is have a central governing body, essentially your store, and then you don't have to, have all these complicated things. All the component has to do is say, I'd like to listen to the context, and it automatically uses React hooks, so it gets updated automatically if you change it, and it just refreshes itself. So it's a very, very nice way of handling state update. So that's how this works. I'm going to run through this API for you just a little bit. There's very little to understand here. The learning curve is very small, right? So what we do with containers, with containers and with unstated. So a container is essentially a custom hook that you wrap around a child component with a provider, right? Like this. So this is the container. Then you wrap it around the child. Typically, you'd use this in the React router, so right at the top level, so that everything has access to it. And then all you have to do is use that container, like this, in the child component. It's very, very simple. So let's go ahead and do the first one with our API and the API loading in all of the sidebar content. So let's do this as the first one, right? We're going to turn the sidebar content and all the data in here into a container. All right, so I'm going to go into our client. We go yarn add -d for dev, unstated -next. So this is going to install that package for us. Excellent. Now under client, I actually like to have this as a root level container, root level folder under source. Personally, we call this containers. I'm going to call this conversations.container.ts. Now let's have a look at this API they've got for us. Close some of these things down. So we can see here that it exposes a create container, and all it has is a custom hook like this. Now, keep in mind, in this hook, we can return ways of updating the state itself. So see here, we're declaring a value, and we're also exporting an onChange for changing the value itself. So we can expose that. I'll show you guys how this works a little bit later. Cool. So let's go ahead and copy this code. Let's paste it in here. So this is going to be, I'm actually going to put this inside like this. Be a little bit less code, keep it simple. Okay, so this is going to be conversations, create container. Now this is going to be use state, conversations, import that. Now remember, with use state, we can have what we call the TypeScript generic. So this is going to take in the conversation that we have defined in our types folder, our types file. It's going to be an array of conversations. Set value. And now we need to return something. So we're going to return conversations, but we also want a way of loading these conversations. So what I'm going to do here is actually hook into our API. I'm going to const load conversations. This is what we're going to return from here. And I'll show you guys in the child component how we hook this up. But for now, let's just define the container. So load conversations equals, I'm going to go asynchronous. API.load or list conversations. What do we call it? Get conversations. Like this. Convos equals await. And then all we're going to do is just do standard React hook of set update or set conversations. Convos. So if we have a look at the sidebar, we're doing the same thing. Right? We're just replicating this information, except now we're doing it inside the container. Right? So this is exactly the same concept, just now we're doing it here. And now, instead of calling this code here, I'm going to update this slightly, comment this out. We're going to go conversation. We're going to load this conversation in from the container. So we're going to load this container in, like so. Containers, conversations container. Just make sure we're exporting that. So we're going to load this in, and we're going to go conversation.use It's not working. Why is it not working? It's plural. Conversations dot use container. Now this allows us to access the hook. Now what this will do is give us this, whatever we return from the container. Right? So in here, it's the same thing that we've got here. So we've got const conversations and load conversations. Right? So it's exactly the same concept. Now we're just going to do the same thing. Load conversations like this. And then I think we'll just change this to down here. And there we go. So we can remove this. So we're using the exact same concept, except now we're using a container. Now this will throw an error, but I'm going to go try run this for you guys first off. Now the error that we're going to get is part of React context, and it will say components must be wrapped with container.provider. Now what this error is saying is that we're trying to use this conversation container, except we haven't provided the context inside the DOM. So very simply, we'll just go into here. We're just going to add it as to the index.txx. We go conversation dot provider. I'm just going to wrap this app router. So all this will do is provide. So now anywhere inside our application, if we call use container conversations.use container, we have access to conversations anywhere inside the application, and it automatically gets updated anytime we change it. So that is how we solve our state problem. Let's just load this and make sure it's all working. And there we go. Make sense, team? So let's just recap. We added unstated next. We added this container file. Just add this on Slack for you guys. This is the container. And then we updated the sidebar. So let me just show you the diff, the Git diff on this, right? So we used to have hooks, right? And it was just handling itself, and the sidebar itself was automatically interfacing into the API. But we've changed that now. So we're now using the container. And Shane, oh yeah, just sharing the link, which is good. So we're going away with this methodology, because the problem with this is what if there's another component that wants to access the conversations? We currently can't do that. But if we move over to the container-based approach, right, we can have inside here add conversation. In fact, we're going to do this with that button that we have here. Right. So we'll create conversation. It's going to take a name. So we have this create conversation component that we added last week. So it takes in the name of the conversation and passes that to the API. So the same thing, API.create conversation name convo equals. And then we simply just need to update the set conversations like this. So remember, if we're updating an array, we have to append it. So we're going to go conversations. This is all of the conversations. We'll return convos, and then we just add our new one. What's this complaining about? We need to do an await. Okay. So let's see if this works inside our create conversation. So I'm going to export this from the hook. So like we did with our sidebar, we moved this over. We're going to do the same thing inside the create conversation component. So we've got create, we're going to import the conversations container. We're going to go create conversation, this new thing that we just added in. So instead of using the API directly, right, we are now going to create conversation, pass in this here. Const convo equals, and just make sure we're returning that from here. Just so it can redirect. Cool. So all we've done there, it's the same, it's exactly the same concept. Let's just have a look at the change. All right, it's exactly the same concept, except we've just changed it from using the API directly to using our container, using the same thing. So let's just check to see if that worked. Refresh the page, create conversation, blah. Excellent. And you can see here, team, that automatically added it to the sidebar. So that has solved our problem for us. Pretty cool, hey?
Yeah, it's cool. I think last week I brought up that we had
You just cut out for a second. You brought up last week you wanted to see.
Yeah, we had to refresh the screen, right, to see that. Yeah.
Yep, and that's the whole idea behind state management. So, do we have any questions on this team? How to implement it?
Yeah, so we are using basically unstated next to do this part, right?
Yes.
So React hooks like the state management, it doesn't offer this so that we can render the sidebar whenever there's a change?
It does. However, this allows you to update it. So this is like a tiny library for just handling updates. So the way you update the context itself from the context.
Oh, right. Sense. Otherwise, we'll have to pass states and props around because states is just on it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this helps,
So this just helps with that, and it's almost a zero learning curve. If you know how to use hooks, it's almost a zero learning curve. Cool. So it's really nice. I think you guys will really like it. I use it in production everywhere. I've reduced my code. Like when you take a Redux project and you turn it into this, your state management code is like a third of what it used to be. And
so does it improves performance overall because now it's
I think it will probably improve performance. Definitely improves file download size of your website because Redux is huge, and it also reduces complexity. So the other thing as well is because it's simpler, you have less bugs, and because you have less bugs, you spend less time debugging. So this whole process actually saves you quite a lot of time, not just from writing code, but also from debugging code. It's a very nice solution to solve this problem. Yeah. Do we have any other questions on what this is or how we use this or why we need it?
Yeah, what's the difference between that and the context API?
So that was Rajat's question.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. So this just adds a little bit of an extra wrapper around how you update the context. So it's a nice way of handling that. So the way this see how this conversation's here, set conversations, and we're exporting it, and then we're adding that in here. It's just it's just a nicer way of handling that. I don't think the context, like itself, React context provides a way of doing that. This is just a nice little, a tiny wrapper around it. It's more, think of it less as a library and more of a pattern, like a development pattern.
One more thing. Can I see your index, please?
So I've just wrapped it around like this. I can add that for you guys. So with context, you need to provide the root, right? So that in React, everything underneath this, inside of it, has access to this now. If this apparatus was sitting outside, right, then we'd have that error that we had when we first started, which was you need to provide a provider. So this just wraps everything. Now, as we add other ones, right, well, we can wrap them around here as well. So we can actually have as many as you want, right? And put them all inside like this. Food.container, like all the other ones that you have. Like you might have authentication and various other things. Cool. So I'm going to add this into GitHub, but do we have any other questions so far? Excellent. All right, so this is the clients added unstated state control. That is now on GitHub for you guys. So now we're going to jump into the fun part, right? We're going to jump into WebSockets. So WebSockets, as I mentioned to you earlier today, I kind of imagine, you know, it's kind of like a telephone call, or like those cans with the string between them. It's not like a normal API request or a REST call where the client asks for something and the server gives it back. This is different. WebSockets actually keeps that connection open. So the client can ask for something, the server can give it back, but then the server can also send a message to the client. Now that's very useful, especially useful inside the chat app, because you're going to have multiple people talking, right? So that's what we're going to use to set up this instant communication between the two. So I'm going to use something called Socket.io. And this allows us to handle the sockets. You can see here, this stuff is all using it. So the API is quite simple. It's been a while since I've used it, so I'll have to learn it with you guys. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Gives us a little bit of context. So HTML, this is just basic Express. Cool. All right. So I'm going to, socket.io is the name. So I'm going to add that to our API. Yarn add socket.io. Okay. So this is asking us to, what is it asking us to do? Just Google socket.io Express. There should be a way to mount it into Express automatically. Saying port 80. That shouldn't. Where are we? I'm trying to find a way to join the two together, because we've got essentially Socket will listen, I think, on a different port, and we've also got the API as well. So we need to find a way to join those two together. I'm just trying to find the right code for it. It's been a number of years since I've used Socket. Okay. All right, let's just try it with running it on the port 80. That's fine. So I'm going to import this here. Close all my files down. Go into API index.ts. So import them here. Import HTTP from. Let's do that on second line. Okay. So const HTTP equals server. And then this app, I believe, is the Express app. Okay, that's how they join together. Cool. So let's do that down here. We've got our HTTP app. And then we've got this IO. So we'll do that underneath here. IO. Could we pass the app of this? This might need a types. Yep. So we're also going to install yarn add -d at types socket.io. Okay. So what we've just added here is a way of registering the socket.io onto our Express app. Okay. And then HTTP listen. I think instead of running the standard app.listen, we're going to go http.listen and the same port. So just a slight change in how we run the server. So let's just check this is all running. Go back to our web, refresh. Okay, so it's all working. Express is working as normal. So now we should have this this socket.io mounted onto the same HTTP server. So what we've effectively just done is joined the two together. Do you have any questions on how that worked? It's all documented inside the Socket.io's website if you guys want to read more about it. So the next part is to now start setting up some connections. So let's just do some basic stuff here. I'm going to put this under lib and call it sockets.ts. Export default. Pass in a socket connection. What type is this? This is a io.server. io.server. Automatically. Import from socket.io. Okay. Okay, s.connection. On connection. What do they have? On connection. On connects. Log got a connection. Okay. So this is on the server side. Now on the client side, we need to do the same thing. So we need to install Socket on the client and connect to here. So this is how I'm going to do it from this side. Socket.io, JS. Let's have a look. See if these guys have an idea. Okay, so I think this library must automatically expose this API, this JavaScript endpoint. Let's just test this. No. Let me check. So we're trying to get this on the client side. Let's just Google Socket.io client. I see. This is how we do it. So I'm going to install this one on the client side now. So yarn add -d Socket.io client. We probably also need some types for that. So I'm going to go into our client lib, and I'm going to add sockets here as well. Sockets.ts, import sock.io. This, and we do need a type. So install those types. So how are they saying? Okay, multiplexing. I think we just want to keep it simple. A single connection is used when connecting to different namespaces. So you can have different names, essentially different rooms inside Socket, and that will become useful when we have different conversations. For now, I just want to keep it simple. Let's just try this. Connection, socket, new IO. Maybe it's just IO. Yep. So let's see if this is working. What we should hopefully see is when the client connects to the server, we should see a connection. What's going on here? We're trying to attach a socket to handler function. Please pass HTTP server instance. Not sure what's going on there. Just Google this error. HTTP module. HTTP app, HTTP server, create server, socket.io, listen. Listen. Maybe this is better. Yep. Hopefully that should fix our problem. Yep. Okay, so that worked. Not sure what that was. Okay, so now we've got the client as well. And if we come here and we refresh here, this should hopefully make an attempt to connect to the API. And not yet. Okay, maybe if we try socket.connect, see if this works. Okay, so what's going on here? It's talking about these different rooms. I wonder what's going on here. Just check. See if this tutorial can help us. Doesn't look like it. So what I'm trying to do here, team, is just to connect the two together. Once we get that, we're smooth sailing. But I'm trying to see this in the API. But I'm not sure why. Oh, that's because we haven't called this. Apologies. So I've added this as a separate file. I need to call this. So call sockets. This is going to take in the IO server. Cool. So initialize socket IO. So hopefully this should work now. Still nothing. Okay. Check that the file is loading. Yep, so it's definitely. If anybody does have experience with socket IO, feel free to speak up as well. Why is this not working? URL options force new. Try this again.
I don't really have any experience with Socket.io, but if you want to take us back through the error, then maybe we can.
We're not getting an error. That's the problem.
What is the problem?
So the problem is it's not connecting. So we're trying to establish a socket connection, but it's currently not connecting.
And that's this part here.
Yeah, that's this part 6. Here. Oh, you know what it is? Is I haven't included this file. That's why. Import lib sockets. Silly me. All right, that should hopefully fix it.
Yeah, sometimes just explaining the problem triggers the answer is.
Hopefully this works. Socket IO. Not found. What if we try taking this out? We've definitely made progress. Still not connecting. Conversations, connect. What is going on here? It's trying to post. I'm just going to Google this one. Failed the handshake. what we're trying to do is get the handshake working together. And it's socket. So this is what we're doing. And try this way. See if this hopefully fixes that problem. Still not getting it. Sorry, team. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here with this. Might take a little while to debug.
I'm trying to debug it on my side as well. If I find a solution, I'll
That'd
share
be,
it with you guys.
yeah, that'd be good. Interpret request starting with socket IAs because your case. You have to make the HTTP be listener, so the socket IA will have some inter-request handling. If not, if this doesn't work, guys, we'll just move on to the deployment, and then I might address this a little bit later. Okay, so it's not working at all. Maybe if I move this above. Really not sure what's going on there. I'm just going to undo this. Yeah, sorry team. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. This should be connecting, but for some reason it's really not.
Back over what we did with the sockets and
yeah,
see what's happening, what are the steps, and what are we expecting to happen.
Is it running on a different port? Well, that might be the problem. That's the problem, I think, is that we're using the wrong. We're using the wrong. The API is living on port 9999. I think. Yeah. So that should hopefully be the solution. It sets something up. Okay, cool. So we've got something. This is working. So we've got something. Let's have a look here. See here is we've got this. So a standard request comes through with various details about the REST API and request headers and responses and various other things. The WebSocket one comes down with what we're sending. So we are actually working, which is, oh, that might just be from, I think that's just from Webpack. Hmm. 9999. Okay, so I think it is working. I don't know why we're not seeing this connection come through. That is a little bit concerning. So why don't we just try sending something? Hello. See if this works. Let's make sure that built. Okay. No. So that's not working at all. Sorry, guys. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. With some strange errors happening. So that's all good. Why don't we just go ahead with deployments, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. Hopefully one of you guys finds the solution. If not, I might try later after we deploy it. I might try not using Socket.io, just use the basic WebSockets. That might hopefully help us. So we'll see. But this is being a bit strange. So I do apologize for that. I'm just going to go ahead and commit these changes. Added socket.io. Okay, so let's change gears just a little bit. Before we jump into it, just going to give you guys a 5-minute break before we start jumping into the deployments, and Heroku and Netlify. So we'll come back at about probably 5 to 12. If you guys just want to take a quick break.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep.
Cool. Back in 5.
No worries. I'm going to try and debug this problem.
Yeah, we'll be back in 5.
No worries.
I'll see if I can fix it in that time as well.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, because it is making the request. Yeah, but it's not connecting. Try this. No, that is what we have. I'll try a couple of different things. Ah, it's working. We got it. We got it working. I don't know why that didn't work from inside here. Why is that the case? So it is. Interesting. Great. Okay, well, good thinking. I'm not sure exactly what we did there, but it is now all working. What I might do is we have this logger. I might turn this off for now. Where are we using that? I'm going to turn off this logger because it's a bit hard to see any messages that are coming through. Just make it a bit cleaner. Great. So if we go, I think this is the, let's just check that is sending. No. Client, send hello. So I'm wondering why this is not sending anything. Yeah. I'd really like to see that here. But we're not. Dot on. So we're good. We might just continue with deployment, and we'll come back to this. Really not sure what's going on here. Well, good. Give it a couple more minutes. Has anybody else had any luck with their sockets? Check the chat. Cool. Yeah. No worries, guys. Let's just continue with deployment. I think that will that'll get us moving forwards. I'll undo these changes. Okay, so the first part that I want to do is the Heroku. So what we're going to do is Heroku is pretty easy to set up. If you guys don't currently have a Heroku account, please sign up for one. It's very easy. And once you're in, let me know. I'm going to create a new application. So it should be pretty easy to follow. But I'm just going to give you guys a couple of seconds to sign up to that. Sign up with GitHub, or I forget exactly what settings they have. Sign up. Yeah. So if you guys just follow through this, and then we should be good to go. Just going to log in again. So to create a new app, just go up to the top right hand here and go New App. I'm going to call this Chat App. CM. So you guys are going to have to come up with your own app name. This will actually deploy it to cm-chatapp.herokuapp.com. So you guys will have to have your own one. I'll add this to US, create app. Cool. So this is how Heroku looks when you're first starting it out. We're going to do something pretty basic with GitHub. So Heroku has a nice feature. Whenever you push to GitHub, it automatically rebuilds everything, which is pretty nice. So this is going to be under code mentoring. We'll call it webinar chat app. So I'm going to connect that together. This is why I said to you last week that you have to, it's a strange error. You have to have a Git account and you have to have your project in Git for this to work. If you don't, you can use the Heroku Git client. You can use this one here, but I recommend using GitHub. Cool. So master branch, enable automatic Git deploys. So when I click this button, what that will do is whenever I push to Git, it will automatically build and update our app, which is great. So we've got a slightly different structure in that our API isn't living on the root. It's actually living under this packages here. So I haven't actually done that inside Heroku. Let me just have a check. Heroku monorepo. Okay. So the way Heroku works is you have these things called a proc file or a process file. And what this does is it tells the API or tells the Heroku API how to run your project. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a proc file here, like this. PROCFILE is the name of it. And it's going to be a web process. So it goes web : and we're going to go yarn, start API. And then inside package JSON, the root package JSON that we've got here, we're going to add a script called start-API.
So is this proc file like a build file?
No, it's like a running file for telling Heroku how to run your API. So this is going to be cd packages API and then yarn start. We might need a post install as well to build the project. So post install, we're going to go yarn learner. We'll just go. We need to build the API. So cd packages API yarn build. So we might need to do a little bit of debugging just to make sure this all works. But for now, let's try this. So if we go to our root project, let me go yarn start API just to check that that is actually working. Great. So that is good. That is working. And then, all right. So let's try this. We'll go CI edit Heroku files, Heroku config. Now, as soon as I push this, Heroku should automatically start to deploy it. So if we have a look under activity, you can see here, hopefully, it should show up. Yep, build in progress. So I didn't need to do anything just then. All I needed to do was connect it to my Git and just push. And that's how easy Heroku is. So let's have a look at this build progress to see what it's doing. All right, it's creating up an environment. It'll automatically install dependencies for us, which is nice. And then what I did here with this post install is as soon as it installs, this is a hook inside of Yarn that as soon as you run install, it will actually run this command after you've done install, which is handy. So because we want to build the API because the API is in TypeScript. Okay, so let us just do its thing. Building fresh packages. Great. So now it's building our API. We can see here. CD packages API yarn build. Great. All right. So it looks like that's been built, succeeded, which is good. And hopefully launching. There we go. So hopefully if we load this up, this should be available. Maybe not. Okay, so I wonder what is going on here. I know what the problem is. Can anybody tell me? Anybody have a guess of what this problem is? I know what the problem is, but I want you guys to have a think about what this might be.
Is it because we are just deploying the backend for now?
Yes, but we're only trying to access the backend. So why is there an error? I'll give you a hint. It's on this page, on this file here that I'm looking at right now.
Is it the listening part, like you are using localhost 999?
So that's the problem, right? So Heroku in its deployment, or anywhere basically you deploy your app, it's not going to necessarily use that port, right? Heroku manages that themselves. So we have to use something called environment variables, right? So environment variables are the context in which your app is running. Now you can access this in Node.js very easily. If you go process.env, and then the name of the environment variable. Now typically, these are all under capitals, capital underscore, right? So what we're going to use is port, like this. So this is the port that we want to run on. Now here, we're going to say we want to listen on this port, otherwise listen on port 9999. So this, by default, will automatically try and load it in. Otherwise, it will just run our local development server here, like this. Let's just copy this. Const port equals this. And we'll also update this, this guy here. Does anybody have any questions around that? Cool. So let's go ahead and deploy it. So fix port to env. Deploy this, and then we'll go back to our screen. Go back to activity, and we'll see if we refresh a couple times. Did I push that? Yeah, it's pushed. There we go. New build is happening. So we're going to go through the same process. Now, hopefully, fingers crossed, that was the only problem that we had. So we'll see. Now, while we're waiting for this to build, we can go ahead and set up our Netlify. So if you guys haven't signed up to Netlify yet, please do. It's free. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. So you're going to create a new site once you've logged in from Git. The same kind of concept, guys. You're just linking together a GitHub project. And this is going to be code mentoring. I'll give it access to that. Code mentoring. Chat app. There we go. So the same thing we did in Heroku. Now, this is going to be yarn build dash call it client. So we'll add that in here. Build client. I'm going to go cd packages client yarn build, like that. So it's going to build that. And then the publish directory is going to be under packages client dist. So this dist folder is what we're going to put onto Netlify. So packages client dist. I will just give you guys a screenshot of this. Just so you can see those configuration settings. And then I'm going to go ahead and feature added Netlify build. That should actually be all we need to do for Netlify. So I'm just going to push that now. And I'm going to go deploy site. I don't think we need anything else. Great. So let's just go back to our Heroku. Hopefully our Heroku guy is finished. Yep. Now if we refresh this, no. Okay, so it's not. So now we've got some problems because we were expecting this to work. So let's go into the logs. So if I go more, logs, we can actually see what's going on here. Doesn't seem to be any problems with it. So I wonder why. I think it might be because of the database. So let's see if these guys have an SQLite plugin. No, they do not. Okay. So we have a problem, guys, in that the SQLite database that we're running locally doesn't work inside Heroku. But no worries, because we're using SQLize, we can very easily change this. So we're going to go ahead and add a database. Let's just use a Postgres one. All right, on the free tier. Okay, so now this has been attached as a database, which is pretty cool. Now, if you go into settings, you'll actually see reveal config variables. So this is the environment variables living here. Now you'll see here there's this database URL. That's been automatically loaded from this resources thing here. So what we have to do in our database file is instead of connecting to this, we need to connect to the live database. Okay? So we're going to need to change this a little bit. I'm going to go const db options.
Hey, Tristan, I have a quick question.
Yep.
You said before when we were putting in the database URL, or like even before that, the free version of it or the free tier.
Yep.
GitHub Premium, but would me having a higher level of GitHub or a paid tier of GitHub actually help out with getting a higher tier in Heroku?
I'm not sure how those two are related.
I know when we do connect with GitHub to Heroku. Yeah. I don't know if me having a premium GitHub account would help.
No.
With anything.
With no, they're separate. They're separate entities. They're separate companies. Yeah. Yeah. GitHub is just for storing the code and whatnot, whereas Heroku is for the actual applications that you're storing them.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and check this. So we're going to go const db options equals. I'm going to go process.node env.node environment. Now, node environment is a way of changing what environment you're running the server in. So typically you'll have things like production, which is what we'll be running on Heroku. In fact, I think it's already set to that by automatically. You'll have development for local development. And then if you're running like testing or CI or various other things, you might have CI or testing, right? And what you can do is change different things inside your application depending on what environment that it's running in. So we're going to do that exact same thing here with our database credentials. Right, we're not going to use SQLite. We're going to input this config variable that you see here, this database URL. And SQLite can automatically handle that. So we're going to check to see if it equals production. If this equals production, oh, actually, you know what? Let's keep it simple. Process.env.database URL. So we're going to, by default, we want to use this. Copy. Okay. Otherwise, use this. And then SQLize, we just pass in the DB options like this. So I think that might need a URI. I think there was a way of connecting to it with, let me just check. SQLize connect with string, connection string. Yeah, so you should be able to connect directly like this. I think it's just SQLize TypeScript that's causing that problem. So I'm actually going to do a TS ignore on that. Is that I think that should be correct. An easy way to check is to get that connection string and then just run it locally. So the way you run or pass in environment variables locally, if I just go to CD packages API, if I go, the name of that was database URL equals, and then you just do this. So this is this big long connection string. Don't put this anywhere. I'm going to change this after this video, but this is a very secure connection string. If you put this in your code somewhere, or you put it in the log file somewhere, then everyone can access your database. So I'm going to obviously change this, but yeah, please don't share this code with like your code, otherwise it's not secure. So database URL equals, and then just going to go yarn start. And that should hopefully, yeah, connect to the database. So we can actually pass a string in, which is good. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and update that. Feature added database URL option. And then if we just run it without that, so we just go yarn start, that should still also work. So that will connect to our local one. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, so I've just done another deployment on that, and we'll wait for that to come through. While we're waiting, let's jump back over to our Netlify. So this says here it's published. It says 3 new files, which is pretty great. So let's go ahead and have a look. Preview. Great. So we've got a blank screen. Let's go to login, see if that's working. Okay, so it's not. So what we need to do is we need to tell Netlify to push everything, because we don't currently have a login page in HTML. If we have a look at the dist folder, all we've got is these 4 files here. It's a very simple app. So what we need to do is we need to what we call a rewrite rule, which tells Netlify to push all traffic through index.html, and we want React to handle the update for the route. Does that make sense, guys? It's just we're moving to a client side route handling, because by default there is no login page inside the disk. So that's actually quite easy to do. Netlify reroute redirect to index.html. Great, redirects file. Great, so this is what we're going to add in. So I'm going to paste that in Slack for you guys. And we're going to add this to the netlify.toml, I think it's called. Yep. So you guys can have a look at this page for more information. But this is essentially what we're going to be doing. So if we come in here and we add in our netlify.toml redirects, I think if we just do this, that should work. Oh no, sorry, it's a redirects file, underscore redirects. Not a netlify toml. Netlify toml is for some more advanced stuff. We're just doing a simple one. So this is just saying, grab all routes, put them through index.html, and make sure it's a 200 response code. So that should hopefully fix this. Fix redirect Netlify. And Netlify will do the same thing as Heroku, and it will automatically, we go back to our thing, it will automatically start building it, which is great. So we don't need to worry about that. Now, if you want to, you can come in here and actually change the site settings. Give it a nicer name. Chat app. EM chat app. Great. So you guys want to come up with your own one? Great. So we're almost there. Let's check out. Build is still in progress. So when you're at this stage, team, we're often just waiting around for things to build. So it gets a little bit boring. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can skip ahead to the more interesting part. Cool. So we've got a couple other things. Can anybody tell me some other things that they know we're going to need to change in the future for this to all work? Anybody have any guesses? So one thing we're going to need to do is change. Oh, it's still not working. I wonder why. No redirect rules processed. Redirects file. Did I misspell this? No. Maybe if we just put it on the star. What's going on here? I'm going to check another project that I have. Just copy that. Okay. This should hopefully work. Redirects. So this is less coding stuff, guys, and more DevOps or deployment configuration. Not my personal favorite in terms of things to work on, but I like coding more myself. But it is a very important thing to understand and to learn.
I heard the DevOps guys get paid more than the coders, though. Really cheeses me.
It depends. Depends what type of coder you're talking about. If you're talking about like a senior engineer, no, not necessarily. Depends, and like if DevOps is just like doing basic server admin, then no. But if they're doing, crazy stuff with Docker swarms and AWS configurations and stuff, then yeah, maybe. It really depends. So I'm not sure why that redirects is not coming through. Hopefully this, cool. So fingers crossed, this will work now. Still not working. Okay, that's not good. Let's check the logs. So it's not giving us any logs. Crash starting. Release created.
Tristan, I saw that it was still building.
Ah, here we go. Yep, and you're right. It was still building, and here we go. This is the problem. Nodemon not found. So that's the error that we're experiencing. So let's go ahead and check that that's installed. And it's not installed. That is the problem. That package API. It's just, okay, guys, here's a really important distinction. Really important distinction is this failed because it's sitting inside dev dependencies. Heroku does not install dev dependencies because it's a production environment. And that's why this is not available. That's why we had that error. So let's go ahead and add this into our main dependencies, and this should fix our problem. So fix Nodemon dep. So I know I'm jumping around a lot over different things here, guys. So if you're confused by anything, please stop me and let me know. So that should hopefully fix that problem. And what about Netlify? Still no redirect rules. I wonder why. I think I know what the problem is. I think it's because the redirects actually need to be placed inside the dist. Inside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that into here. Now the problem, I can't just add that in because this gets built dynamically. So what we actually have to do is copy it in. So inside here, I'm going to go Webpack P to build it. I'm going to go copy redirects into dist redirects. I think that's the problem. So let's just check this. Build this. So the dist should hopefully, by the end of this, have that redirects file sitting inside. Yeah, great. So let's try this one. Fix Netlify redirect in dist. Getting closer. How's Heroku doing? Okay, so we've gotten further, right? So we can see here, please install the Postgres package manually. That's because we've changed in production from running the SQLite to Postgres. So we need to install the Postgres package. So what I'm doing right now is just going through a bunch of different errors and things and fixing them as we go. Most of this right now is just going to be debugging, not necessarily coding per se.
So Tristan, what did you do for the redirect? I missed that part.
Yep, so in the redirects, I realized that it has to be part of the dist. So in Netlify, under deploy settings, you'll see here, I think it's, where is it? General. somewhere there's like the build and deploy. We're giving it the dist folder. Yeah, publish directory, dist. The redirects file needs to be living inside here. So what we did is we just simply, when we build it, we add the Webpack, we do the Webpack build, and then we simply just copy into here.
Cool.
Into the dist. So just so that Netlify has this as part of the dist folder. Cool.
Hey, Tristan.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a quick question related to Heroku. Why, like, I do use a NoSQL database for my project. I'm using MongoDB. So would it be possible I can still use something like Google App Engine or an alternative to Heroku as well, or?
Yeah, certainly. Same kind of concepts.
All right.
Yeah. So you can definitely, you can deploy that anywhere you need, whether it's Roku app, whether it's Microsoft Azure, whether it's AWS. There's so many different places. I find Heroku to be quite simple and then kind of a no-brainer. Plus, it also gives, like, if you want to install MongoDB here, you can. So if I just go Mongo, you can install one of these ones,
right?
And that will give you a free one. So.
And how would Heroku be with scalability as opposed to other places? Because I know
extremely easy. So if I just go to resources, change dyno type, and all I have to do at this point is click a slider and scale it.
Right.
So it's a very, very, very easy way to scale up to things. It's more expensive because it's such an easy tool. So if you do want to get more nitty gritty, I'd recommend moving to a platform like AWS.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. No worries. Okay, so I've just added Postgres. Hopefully this is building. Oops. Let's have a look, see if that worked. Hooray! So API is now working, which is fantastic. We get this cannot get because we haven't specified anything for this, but this is now working, which is good.
So Tristan, basically it was
what?
It was all that database stuff mismatching.
It was all database stuff, and I needed to make sure that I installed Postgres as well as a dependency to npm. So that's all installed now. You can check the Git logs if you want. If you're confused as to what I just did, come into commits. You can have a look through some of these things here. So this is all the stuff we've done today. Been a busy day, team. Okay, so Netlify should hopefully have built and updated as well. One redirect rule processed. Excellent. So it worked. Let's check preview. We go to login. Hooray! So it's now working. All right. We almost got it working, team. Let's got a couple of things left. So who can tell me what the problem with this is right now?
I think you need to update the URLs on the
exactly. So if I submit this form, right? hello.com, right? That's going to send through the wrong URL. So if I go login, you see here, that's saying localhost. We do not want this to be localhost, right? We want this to be the API that we've deployed on here. So we want that to be this URL, right? So this is what we need to replace inside our code. But we also want it to work locally. So this is where it gets very useful to use Webpack. And in Webpack, I can configure, when we build it, I can configure to replace certain URL. So if we just go localhost in here, we just look for where we're referencing this, prefix here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually replace this with just some keyword, right? API URL. You can call this whatever you want. I'm just putting some things just to make sure that, and add a comment, replaced in Webpack, depending on the node environment. Okay? So, in our Webpack config, right down the end in the plugins, I'm going to go new, I think it's replace Webpack plugin. Let me just see if I have that installed already. Nope, you don't. So I'm going to go into the client, yarn add -d, Webpack plugin replace. So this is what we're installing.
Tristan?
Yep.
Yeah, so if suppose we are using like a create React app,
yep.
then how will we do this stuff? Like, because
so
that won't have Webpack, I guess.
Create React app actually allows you to, I think, modify or extend the Webpack JSON or the Webpack config. So create. I don't use create React app, so and plugin Webpack config.
Worries, I can research on that.
Yeah, have a look for yourself. Yeah, cool. So I've just installed that plugin. So import that plugin replace. It's called Webpack plugin replace. I think we need to install some types for that as well. Oh no, it automatically has them. That's good. And then under here, all right, this takes in, it's being a bit slow, VS Code. This takes in, what does it do? Let me just check. Webpack replace plugin. Values. Like this. So we're going to change this guy here. So what this plugin will do is it will look over all of the files that you have inside Webpack, and we can replace things, which becomes very, very useful. So in here, I'm going to replace this with the correct URL, depending on the node environment. So this gets changed to process.node.env.node equals production. Now, if it's production, we want it to be equal to this. And if it's not production, we want it to be equal to HTTP localhost 9999. So you guys can configure that yourself. You'll have to obviously replace this URL with your deployed Heroku URL. But that's how this should work. So I'm going to add this into, I'll just copy and paste my Webpack config so you guys can have a look. So that's this little part here. So when we build this in production, which we do in Netlify, it should use this one instead. But if we're running locally, it should just use this one. Does that make sense, team? Cool. All right, so fetch API, this is a client, fix API URL. Let's go ahead and deploy that. So you can see how having this automatic Git deployment is very, very nice, and you don't have to worry about pushing, doing any crazy things with CLIs or deployment scripts or that sort of stuff. It's very simple. It's just simply push to deploy, which is nice. So let's go back to our Netlify. This should hopefully be building. Yep. Great. What else do we think, team? What else do we think we need to work on? The elephant in the room is obviously the sockets. So hopefully I can get that working for you guys today. If not, we might have to try to do that next week. But we're almost there. What we probably do need to have is a sign-up page. Because currently the only way to add a user is through the API. So we can probably do that after we get this working.
I already have a sign-up page, so if anyone does want to look at it, they can always ask.
Sure. Yeah, I'm probably going to run through that in a second.
All right.
It's very similar to the login page, same concept. We're not going to do anything fancy. So sign up can be quite complicated sometimes. I'm not going to do anything fancy with. Oh, okay. So we've had an error. Let's just go and install this type. That fixes it. Okay. So here is a situation where TypeScript does not, the package that you want to use does not have a type associated to it. So you have to change this to just a standard import, a standard require. Unfortunately, the problem with this is you obviously don't get any typings associated to it. But if that plugin doesn't, if that module doesn't expose types and that doesn't exist under @types, that's all we can do right now. Oops. If that doesn't make sense to you guys, don't worry. Just know that to get around that problem, just use the require. Cool. So while this is building, I am going to start on the sign-up page. So like I was saying to you earlier, sign-ups can be quite complicated. We're just going to keep it simple. We're not going to do anything like email verification or any of that sort of stuff. We're just going to simply have username and password, and then you get signed straight in. So we're going to keep it simple. Cool. So let's have a look under our routes, user route. Actually, do we have anything for sign up? No. So user route. Why don't we put this under, actually, auth. Routes, where are we? Auth. We've got login. Maybe it would make sense to have our sign up here. So sign up is going to take an email and a password. So instead of finding a user, it's going to create a user. New user. Like this. It's going to take in the email and the password. Let's just check here what we had for create user. I think it should be the first name, last name, email, and password. So these are all the things we need. Okay, so we got first name, last name, email, and password. And we're going to get all these and put them into our user like this. Simple. Cool. And so we can remove this. We don't need any. Okay. So when we're creating the user, we did the user password hash here. Create a user. So what I might do is take this out into its own folder, like we had here. Create user. Yes, just so we can reuse it in a couple of places. Export const new create user. Actually, realistically, I'm just thinking about this. This route is never going to get called because you're never going to create a user. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. Okay. I'm actually going to do what I just did there. I'm going to delete this user, create user from here. I'm going to take it out of this. So I'm going to put that inside the sign up that we have here. Auth router post / sign up. So I've just copied that code and I've just made it public. So it's not protected by authentication now. Does that make sense, guys? Because you're never really going to create a user. If you're logged in as a user, you're never going to create another user. This is not an application like CRUD, a CRUD app where you can create other people and whatnot. This is just the only people who can sign up is a public. It's a public thing. So we'll just move that over. And then let's test that. So go into API. And we'll just test this create user here, move him out. Call it sign up. Sign up. We don't want to have any authentication. This is public. And then that should, okay, what's the problem there? It's not working. I think it's auth sign up. That's right, we prefixed it. Okay, and that's just because we're using the wrong email, a duplicate email. Great, so that's all working. So that's the API endpoint that we're going to use. And then what we're going to do is go into the client and add a new page for that. So router /login, we're going to have /signup. It's going to be the sign up page. And then we're going to create that page. I'm just going to copy and paste the login. Sign up. Sign up page, CSS, and sign up page.tsx. Login. There we go. Okay, so if we go into our here, should hopefully have sign up. There we go. Okay, so let's change this a little bit. So sign up to chat up. And have first name. This is going to be the same kind of idea that we have here. It's going to have first name as the ref, last name. Now, some of you guys might be saying, do we have to create references and handle it this way for each time? This is not the nicest solution for forms. I agree with you. It's a bit out of scope for what we're doing today, but if you want to look into forms, I want to have a look into something called Formic. This is a really, really good React library for handling forms. So it's out of scope for what we're doing today, but definitely have a look at this library. It's very, very good. And I would use Formic for this personally, but I just want to keep it simple. So we've got first name, last name, email, password. The same thing here. First name, last name, email, and password. This is going to be app sign up. Then we just have to put these down here. So first name, have last name, okay, and then this is going to be API sign up. So we have to hook this guy up. So it's going to be very similar to the login, sign up, email, first name, last name. Just hooking up that API endpoint. If you guys want to use this, you can. That's under the API file. Cool. So that's our sign up. Hopefully done. So that's going to be our user. So let's just log this and see if this works. Log data. So cool. All right. So let's try and sign up as a user. $400 bad request. Failed to decode. So I think we need to, that's because we need to restart the Webpack server. If you update Webpack config, Webpack does not update itself. So you need to handle it yourself. So we haven't updated this since we did this. So all right, 400, great, invalid login credentials. That's sending us it's doing the wrong thing. And that's because we need to change the API. So I just gave you the wrong data. This is supposed to be sign up. Wait for it, there we go. Sign up. All right, so there we go. Obviously that's not a valid email, so we should probably have some validation on that. You guys can add that later. If you guys want to look into SQLized TypeScript's validation, right, you guys can have a look at the email. There should be an email one here. Here's email. Is here. And if you guys want to put that under the model for the user, and then you'll get a nice error message. So this here should have is email. I'm not going to do that for now because I want you guys to experiment with that on your own. But that should not work. I should not be able to pass anything like that. Great. Okay, so we now have a little basic sign up screen. It would be nice if this takes us, if this logs us in and takes us to the login page. So what we can do from here is we've got this data. Why don't we go await API.login? And we've already got the email and password. So we've signed up. That worked. Now we're going to log in. And data equals. Oh. Logged in. And page. What do we have there? So logged in. Great. So that should do the same thing as the login page. We'll just call this sign up. So what this will do is sign up what we just did, and then it will also do a second request to log us in, and it does the same thing as the login page, that little bit there. There's probably a nicer way to do that, but just want to keep it simple for now. If there's an error, we don't want to say that. We want to say could not sign up. Cool. So let's just test that that works. First name, Bob. Great. So that has logged us in. Now we're noticing a problem because this is still loading in all the conversations. If I try and access one of these things, it won't work. But it's actually loading all the conversations from other people. So we've missed something in our thing there. So we can get onto that a little bit later. We'll add that as a to-do or as a bug. But for now, the sign up page is working. So I'm just going to.
Christian?
Yep.
So it's related to forms. You said like using refs is not the best way to do it. So
yeah.
What's the drawback?
What's the drawback? It's just unnecessary code. Like let's say you had a sign up page with or a form with 100 different fields. You don't want to be managing all of that in 100 different variables. It's not a very nice way to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so libraries like Formic make it easy for us.
Much easier. Yeah. But I don't want to delve too much into that right now because it's a complicated subject. Each added sign up. Okay, so let's hope this all works now. So Netlify, this hopefully should have built this one. Yep, so that was updating the build. So what have we got here? Okay, so we'll wait for that to build. And then we should hopefully have a sign up page once this is ready. And also the Heroku is ready. We should have a working sign up page. So we'll see. We're almost there, team. I can feel the finish line. I can feel it. Just wait for these things to come through. It's a bit of a shame about the sockets. We might have a go at playing with sockets without socket.io. So web sockets node.js. Maybe we try a different library. Might be a bit easier. So we'll have to play with that later. So just waiting for these. Oh, so that added sign up. So if I refresh here, that should work. I'll just have to wait for, okay, so this should hopefully work. Fingers crossed. Secret. Awesome. So where is it getting this data from? It must be somehow loading in localhost. It is. It's still loading localhost. So what I think we need to do here is, I think in Netlify, we need to configure the production settings. Environment. Just going to set it to production. That should hopefully fix it. I'm going to rebuild this. Trigger deploy. Hopefully. If not, then we've got a bug somewhere in our Webpack config. So if equals productions. Yeah, so let's go ahead and try and build that locally just to test it. Node production yarn build. So that should hopefully work. Great. And I'm just going to do a find on the dist folder, client.js. Okay, so that is sitting inside there. I think it was just that one config that we needed. So fingers crossed. All right, so we're getting some problems with the socket IO. What I'm going to do is actually just remove that socket stuff because it's failing our build. So under sockets, I'm just going to remove this for now. We can always add it back in later. Sockets. Just so we can get this sign up page working. That's the goal. All right, so we've got about an hour left. This won't work. Okay, so I've caused a problem here. By setting production to the node environment for Netlify, in the package JSON, it's not going to install any of the dependencies that we need. So what I'm going to do is, instead of setting the environment for the entire site, right, we've got it down here. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do it on the build. So I'm going to set it here. Node env equals production. Does that make sense, guys? Just so that it installs everything. That should hopefully fix our problem. Apologies for that little bit of confusion. Cool. All right, so that should be building. Almost there. We'll stop in a couple of minutes as well. Just want to get this last part done. We'll go for a break. There is something satisfying about watching a successful build, I must say. I don't know if that's just me or if other developers experience this. It's a therapeutic thing to see green lights everywhere. Almost there. Oh. I always joke that you spend half of your life as a developer Googling. And I must say, like, you spend half of your life as a DevOps engineer just waiting for builds. So if you put the two and two together, pretty much all your job is Googling and waiting for things to build.
So Tristan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another question again related to the forms thing. So say like some of us here are looking for jobs and then trying to build these projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does it give like a bad intent to the future employer saying that I'm using a library for some of this stuff and I'm not doing it manually?
So here's the thing about libraries. Typically, like for something like that, you should know how to do it manually, and you use a library to solve that problem for you. So this is the thing about React and JavaScript frameworks in general, is that most people jump into them without actually understanding why they use React or why they use Angular or why they use jQuery or any of these things. They don't know how to do it in JavaScript. That's a problem. But if you know how to do it in JavaScript, there's nothing wrong with using a library for it, in my opinion. And in some ways, like, it actually gets so far to the point where I'd go, well, if you're not using a library, I'm concerned, because why would you reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, it depends kind of where you're at, but make sure you know how to do some of these things yourself. Yeah. So let's go ahead and try this again. This should hopefully be using the production environment. Password is secret. All right, check the logs. All right, it's not doing something. What's going on? My form is not submitting. Root property type of undefined. This might be a, oh, okay. It was just slow. Cool. Okay, so I think I am logged in. Let me just check this. Right. Secret. I think my Chrome is doing something strange where it's not. I'm gonna try this in a different browser. Ending. Okay, so we're getting a problem with our API. Looks like it might be lagging somehow. Ah, so we do have a problem. Why don't we just try restarting it for now? Something wrong with that. Go back to just wait for that to come back up. Okay, cool. not sure what that was. I think it was because I submitted it so many times. No. Okay, so we do have a problem. Member find one cannot be called user. Model initialized. Okay, so I think this is a problem with Sequelize. So let's go to our database. Are we calling sync anywhere? We are. It's force true. What that will do is, this is slightly dangerous, but it just ensures that the database is up to date. And it potentially has bad implications of rewriting things. So database migration is a whole thing in itself. But for now, I just want to keep it simple. We'll just try this. Fix database sync. I don't know if this Postgres has an API UI layer to it. Let's just have a look. We'll actually see what's inside this database. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, 0 rows. So I don't know if we can expect it. It's okay. We'll just hopefully that fixes the problem. Actually, we can run this locally if we run it through DB. Let's try this, see if this works. Okay, hopefully, I think that's a bit better. We'll see. This has been a bit of a boring webinar. Mostly it's just been waiting for things to build. Apologies, team. I'm a bit of trouble. What's going on here? It's all part of the process. I agree, Ahmed. Just waiting around. I'm not sure what this error is that keeps popping up. Something to do with Heroku. We can't see our logs, which is a little bit concerning. So let me just try again to log in. Put in some fake stuff for now. So it still has a problem with this. And I can't see the logs, which is concerning. Try restarting it again. What I might do is just delete this database. And add it again. Hopefully that fixes it. Okay, the logs are working. Successfully connected to the database. That's what we want. Excellent. So if I come back to my login page, all right. So actually I need to sign in first. Secret. Okay, so login is causing some problems. So is sign up. What have we got? Still saying it's not initialized. Model not initialized. I wonder what this what the problem is here. Sync. See, this should be loading in all the models, so I'm not sure why it's not. I'm wondering if it's because where to find in the database. Ah, here's the problem, team. So when we're setting it to this, we're not loading in the models. So we need to automatically, yeah, okay. So this is our problem. Let me just check the SQLize connection options. We want to pass in both the models and we want to pass in the connection string. I think we might be able to do that. Yes, I think we can do it. We'll do it this way instead. So if there is a database URL, use that first, and then use the DB options. Otherwise, just use the DB options as the yeah, we'll do this. This works. Then this is all the local stuff, which we will remove out. Here. Just make sure that this is great. Okay, so let's just run through what we just changed. So the problem was it was not loading our models because we were just passing in the thing. So now we fixed that. We're passing this in as well as the connection string. And for the local development, we're using just the local settings. So this should hopefully fix that problem. Fix API, connection issues, DB, connection. Okay. Hopefully you guys seeing me bash my head against the wall and debug things is useful, but if not, I do apologize. But I suppose it is important to know that like a lot of development is just, I think this should work and it doesn't. Why doesn't it work? So seeing people go through the process of debugging and critical thinking and breaking things down, while it might seem boring, is actually a really valuable skill in and of itself. And every developer does it. So hopefully it is useful to you guys. Just keep an eye on those logs. Build started. Do you guys need a break? If you guys want to take a break for 5 minutes while we wait for this stuff, that's fine as well. It's up to you guys. You guys tell me.
Yeah, if we're waiting for something to load, I think it's a good time to take a.
All right. Yep. Go take 5 minutes. Come back in. Yeah, come back in 5 minutes. I'll start at 1:23. Skew a number, but you guys.
All right, cool.
You guys go have a look. I'm just going to keep testing this to make sure it's all working. So. Okay, so we're getting some database errors. Connect key constraint. User ID and ID. Character varying in the UID. So I might try deleting this. Trying it again. Okay, maybe not. So I think this is an issue with Postgres and new IDs. Somewhere in our models, I think we need to fix something as referenced as a string. Becomes user ID and ID are incompatible types. This is on messages user ID. So message user ID. I think if we maybe type, maybe if we try this. So if we do this for everything that is referencing another, I think it's just the message and conversation ID. Hopefully that will fix our problem. Just try this. I think also the conversations, user conversations. Cool. So for those who aren't a bit confused as to why I just did that, I think this is a Postgres error saying this was trying to pull it in as a string, but I've just converted it to a UUID, which is still a string. I think it's just some stuff inside the database that's complaining. Hopefully that will fix that problem for those who are confused. Fingers crossed. So it should be building. Just go wait. What's everyone else? Where's everyone else up to at the moment? Curious how you guys are finding this. You guys following along? Am I going too fast? Frankie's chilling. All right, fingers crossed. State change from up to starting. Oh no. Conversation ID. Okay, so we have made some progress. Okay, so I think if we just add them here. Why don't we just do a search on foreign keys? UID, yep. UID. Okay. Did I just miss that one? Hopefully that's it. Just all these annoying little things. This is the problem when you change environments, right? We're going from different databases, different deployment environments, different operating systems. So you start to get all these weird little errors where it works on your machine, but then when you deploy it, like a really common one is case sensitivity. On Mac, files are not case sensitive, but on Linux, which is most deployment environments, they're case sensitive. So sometimes you'll get strange errors with that. There's all sorts of little things. For those who just came back from the break, I'm just tracking down a little database error that we found to do with foreign constraints being typed as a string instead of. So all I've done is just added this this data type here on those. So fingers crossed. Build succeeded. Almost there. We haven't even got to the WebSocket stuff properly yet. So I might have to leave that. Starting. Okay, that looked like it worked. All right, let's try it. Secret. Hey, it worked. Yeah, sure, we'll add that. It worked. So we now have, so there's nothing here. So from a UI perspective and a UX perspective, we should probably have some empty states to show, hey, you want to click on a, create a new conversation and whatnot. But let's just try this. So, inventory. All right. Cool. So hello. Not gonna work? Don't think messaging is working out, right? Yep, that's working. Great. So unfortunately, we don't have a user interface for adding users, but I mean, technically, you guys could actually sign up to this and use this. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that we could have done better. Certainly, the WebSockets would have improved things. I probably don't have time today to implement that. There's lots of other things that we can add to this to make this complete. For example, adding somebody to a chat, adding friends, searching for other users, searching messages, deleting messages, all of these things. This is stuff that you guys can play with and add into your own application. But this is technically working. I mean, why don't I try and sign up myself with a different user? And we'll see if we can actually get a little bit of a conversation going. So sign up, call it Joker. Joker, Wayne, secret. Okay. So I should get a user ID. Come back. Response. So this is my ID as a user. So what I'm going to do is add. So yeah, this is the thing, right? Is we need a way to add other people to the conversation, because otherwise I'm just talking to myself. So is this something that you guys want to add in now, or do you guys want to do this yourself? You guys tell me. You can use microphones or on the chat or whatever. I'm curious to know what would be valuable to you guys right now. Dwayne wants to do it now? All right. Cool. So for this to work, it's going to be a little bit complicated. This might go over 2 p.m. So if you guys, I don't think I don't think I can do this in half an hour. So what we're going to need to, whoop.
If it doesn't get done now, we can even continue next week.
Yep. So let's think about how we're going to do this. We need to have a search endpoint to search for users. And then we need a way in React to add that person to the UI. So the first things first is we need a way to search for users by their name or their email. So let's do that first. So this is going to require a new API endpoint. Under users routes. Does everyone kind of understand where we're at and why we're doing this? So I'm going to go search for a user. It's going to be a get. And it's going to be /search. So did someone add something to the chat?
Yeah, there's a question on chat.
Can we search for active users? What do you mean by active users, Dwayne? Online. Okay, that's adding a much more complicated situation there. Because to do that, we have to have an online status. We have to have whether they're logged in. We have to track that if they're logged in. Yeah, that makes things a lot more complicated. So we're just gonna search for any user in the database, and we're just going to return back their IDs and their names, so we can display that in React. Realistically, that's probably not the safest thing to do. It's not too bad, but yeah, that's what we're gonna do for now. Another alternative would be to add the user by their email, which makes it a little bit safer because it means you have to have somebody's email to add them as a chat. Okay, so let's try this. Search. Now we're going to have to put this above everything because we've got these this user ID thing here. So we need to put it before that just so it doesn't get overridden. Okay, so we're going to have const query equals request.body.query. And we're going to user.find. Let me have a think about this. Sequelize search. Find, that's not useful. Okay. Okay, cool. So this is what we're going to do. Find where first name. This is going to be sequelize dot not exactly sure where this sits. Up dot like. Here we go. Dot like, and this is going to be query. User dot find all. And that's going to be users equals weight. I'm going to go res dot JSON users. So let's just see if this works. We're going to have users, we're going to have search users, users search. It's going to be a post request. Actually, you know what? Let's turn this into a GET request with a query string. It's going to be Q equals Joker. So it's going to be GET. Instead of a request.body, we're going to go request.query.Q to query. Right, so currently there's nothing. Let's just list all the users. There are token. Ah, so there are currently no users. Did we not? What database are we using for this? Because this should have some users. Did we somehow clear our database? Must must have a problem here. What is going on? Let me just paste this. See if this fixes it. Somehow remove our database. Doing that. Strange. Okay, well, let's just go through that process again. Sign up. Joker. Okay. Okay. For some reason, it just lost. You know what? Let's duplicate this. Sign up to Bruce. Okay. And now if we go search users, query Joker. Now if we go search for Bruce. Great. And if we type in something random like return nothing. What if we do partial, like a BRU? Okay. So what if we do Wayne? That shouldn't work. So we haven't set up last name yet. So here we do first name, do last name. So I think it might get a little bit tricky. We'd probably have to do some joining on these together. So we might just do first names for now, if that's okay with you guys. Yeah, this is going to break it. This is trying to match both of them. So let's just for now do first name. You guys can work out a way to join those two together. Now that's not working either. Why isn't that working? Oh, I know why. Because when we call force true, it's deleting everything. That's why. So what I'm going to do is set this to production. Process.env.node. So only, yep.
So why force true is, didn't we say like it kind of sync change?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to actually remove it. Yeah, I'm gonna remove it because I think it's deleting everything and it's causing problems. So I'm gonna delete that. So forget that it's there. So sign up to, great. And then if we do a search, Joker, great. Let's just try that again then, because that might actually work now. Joker, what if we do Wayne? No. So we're gonna have to just stick to one for now. Yeah, that's fine. Let's just stick to first name. Okay, so that's pretty much the, oh, we need to remove the password as well. So let's just loop over these. So users, dot map user, and all we want to return is the first name We got last name. And then just the ID. Cool. That way we don't have any security holes giving out people's house passwords. There we go. So just those. Now this is what we're going to display on the React side, right? So just going to save this into Git so you guys can have a look. So feature added to the API, added user search endpoint. So that's up there for you guys. Now on the client, changing gears a little bit, we're going to have, say, it's not running. That's why. Yeah. So in our client, we've got to have some kind of search button or something, a way to add people. So what is this going to look like visually? Let's have a think about how Messenger does it. I think they have a pretty complex thing where they have like a side window. Search and conversation. Let's maybe what we do is we have it as the when you add a user. Sorry, create a conversation. So in the new conversation, maybe we have it here instead. With like, yeah. This is going to be a little bit tricky as far as time is concerned. So, yeah, we'll just keep it ugly for now. We'll just have a separate box for selecting a user, searching and selecting a user. So on the create conversation, we're going to have, so we've got this input field here. We're going to have to do an autocomplete component. Yeah, this is going to take some time, guys. I'm just realizing. So why don't we make this next week's activity, if that's okay with you guys? Because this is going to take some time for me to jump into autocompletes and a few other things as well, like some pretty complex React UI. So what we can do is we can actually make it like a proper modal that pops up, and we'll do it properly as opposed to cheating. So we'll do a nice way of doing this. Is that okay with you guys? Does that work?
Yep, it's cool. Yeah.
Cool.
You mentioned last week we could even keep going with this each Saturday. If there was some new ideas, you could even think about something, like you could think about it during the week and actually show us something new. This could be something you could work on next week. Yeah,
definitely. I also do want to delve out into some other projects with you guys and try some new things. But as long as this is useful for you, we can certainly continue. So I'm gonna have a play with WebSockets this week. I'm sorry I couldn't get that working for you today. I do apologize. I'll have a look into that. We might try a different library, but we do have something deployed, which is good. At the moment, it's just a single user. But if you guys want to play with it yourself and have a try adding some UI so that you have multiple people inside here, certainly give that a go. So yeah, maybe you can have have an experiment with modals, popping up with a modal, and having some sort of input field where you can select a user and add them to it. So I'm going to leave that. Yep.
Would you recommend like the React modal library, or we should build our own?
To be honest, like you don't really need to with portals, React portals, and I'll run through this with you guys next week. React portals, you don't really need a modal library. So have a research of that. React portals. So have a look through how to build this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I'll show you guys how to do this next week, and we'll build out a little pop-up screen that allows you to search for a user and add them to the current conversation. I think that'll be good. Does that work with you guys?
Yep.
Cool. And then we'll also try and get WebSockets working as well. So thanks for your patience today, guys. I know it was a bit of a boring session, just so much waiting around and letting things build. But hopefully next week should be a little bit more interesting now that we have all our deployment pipelines set up for us. Is there anything else I can help you guys with today? Anything you guys are curious about, want to talk about? I know we're a little bit under for time, so still got about 10 minutes left. So if you guys want to chat about anything.
So Tristan, in your day-to-day work, like how often do you see yourself deploying? Say you are working in a team, right? So is it the DevOps guys taking care of this stuff?
No, it's me. I do this every day. Let me rephrase that. It depends what stage of the project I'm in. So if I'm in writing the first lines of code for a new project, I'm not going to think about deployment. But if I'm working on existing applications and adding new features, then yeah, I'm thinking about deployment every day. And it's not the role of a DevOps engineer. Guys, like as developers, it's our responsibility. I know that sucks, but it is our responsibility. And this is one of those things I talk about, the scope creep of what developers have to know. Like previously, all we had to know was HTML and CSS, maybe a bit of JavaScript. Now we have to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then they added, design, and then they added backends when Node.js came out. And then they added full stack development, and then they added security, and then they added Docker, and then they added machine learning for some people. And then they added deployments, and there's all these different things that have exploded out of what we're responsible for. And the job description for a web developer now is very colored. Nobody really knows what it means. So I would say for most places, you want to understand this stuff. You want to know how to deploy it. The reason I stuck with Heroku and Netlify is that they're simple. Relatively speaking, they're quite simple. You can get into some really complex stuff with AWS and whatnot. That is a nightmare. I don't fully understand it myself, to be honest. So to answer your question, Rajat, yes, this is something that you need to know. It's something that you're working all the time. And it's part of the life as a developer, for sure.
Yeah, Tristan, no, this really helps because I have my other project. I would love to deploy it eventually. So this will help. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, nice. How did everyone else feel about today? Any other questions? Anything you guys want to know? I'll start picking on people like Susie or Tamoya or Ahmed. Gotta go. Thanks for today. Have a good week.
See you, Susie.
See you, Susie. Thanks for coming. Hopefully today was useful. And we'll definitely extend this series out to 1, maybe 2 more weeks. Cool. A real coding session. Yeah, it was, Dwayne. A real coding session because, yeah, exactly what Ahmed said. It's great to see some debugging. And here I am going, oh, crap. But that is your life as a developer. That's what you spend most of your time doing. So.
Yeah, Tristan, this is what I find interesting, that I used to think okay, senior developers, they don't get stuck as much, but it looks like it's part of yeah.
No, you just get stuck on different things. That's the thing about complexity. What we do as developers, we deal with complexity. We deal with systems thinking, right? These are technical terms. And in systems thinking, we're dealing with chaos. And in any chaos system, there's always an increasing amount of complexity and changing dynamic landscapes. And here's the thing about developers, right? Once we've reduced the complexity, what do? We go off and find a new project and find some more complexity, right? We go and learn a new technology. So that's what we do as developers. That's what the industry does as a whole ecosystem. So we have to be very comfortable dealing with chaos and things that we don't understand. So I don't ever feel as a developer that there is a point in which I go, I know everything, ever. I will always be debugging for the rest of my life. I think on a deeper meta level, I think debugging is a really nice analogy for growth in general and thinking about how you approach life and breaking down problems, looking at, it's a mindset that you get into, which is, right, here's this thing and it's broken and it really sucks. Be that the login form isn't working, my relationship isn't working, my kids don't talk to, there's all these different ways of looking at it, right? But it's the same concept, is something like what I want internally doesn't match the external reality. So how do we fix this? And so it's a matter of breaking it down, understanding the whole network of all the pieces and pinpointing each one, touching each one and going, is the problem here? No. Is the problem here? No. And this extends to everything, right? I'm sad. Okay, am I sad because my work sucks? No, actually my work's pretty good. Okay, is it somewhere else? Am I sad because of my relationship and that fight I had? Okay, yes. Okay, cool. So then you zoom in, right? You delve deeper into that idea. It's the same concept. Debugging is the skill that you use in life, and it's a way of seeing the world and breaking problems down and seeing how everything is connected to finally get to the root cause. And then once that's the real thing, right? Is for 90% of problems that you experience as a developer, the problem isn't actually writing code. The problem is understanding where the problem is. And it's the same thing in life, right? You have these complex, big, hairy, scary problems. I'm depressed. I am overweight. I'm whatever. And we look at the problem as a bug and we go, all right, well, it's just a bug. I don't know how to fix that. I'm just going to live with that bug. But the hard part is finding where that bug lives inside you and spending the time and understanding yourself well enough to find where that bug lives, and then actually doing the work itself is pretty easy. It's making the change is easy. It's knowing what to change is the hard part.
Yeah, and when you're debugging, you're actually getting deeper insight into the system.
Yep. Or yourself.
Or the systems yourself, right? You have this end result.
Yeah.
But you obviously have all of these inputs, all of this code, whatever the code is doing, all the inputs to that, and then that's your end result. And the end result is undesirable. It's not what you want. So then you have what are the inputs and what are the actions that the code is taking?
What's in my database?
Yeah, you got to change that. You got to see
what's in my database.
Yeah.
Right? Do I need to go and update some stuff there?
Sometimes you just got to wipe it, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's a matter of going and learning a new skill and overriding it, right? Doing an update.
Here's the other thing with coding as well, which again, I suppose you could say just with your life. Keep it minimal and simple.
Yeah.
In your life, you keep your life. It's a lot easier to debug. You get a lot less problems. Like you showed us that you wanted to use the state. You wanted to use a container for the sidebar. State. I was like, well, you can get Redux, which is heavy, and if there's problems, it's going to be a nightmare to debug it, and it's just going to be a headache. Or you could simplify it and minimize to exactly.
Yeah.
And things are a lot lighter, a lot easier to maintain.
Same thing, right? Like some
yourself,
people go out there and they go and look for happiness by finding a relationship, like this really big, complex undertaking, when really all they need to do is go and exercise a bit or eat healthier. Oh, no, but I need another person to make me feel happy. Do you? What if you found out you could be happy with yourself? It's the same kind of thing, right? Don't use Redux, this big, hairy thing, unless you know how to use it and it makes sense to use it. Go and find the simplest solution.
Well, that's it. You're not just taking Redux. Oh, just Redux will solve the problem. You're actually thinking about it and comparing what are the other options.
Yep.
And you're just
that requires
doing, you know?
Yeah, that requires a good understanding of the system, right? To know what makes sense to fit in to the existing count, like all the pieces and how they all fit together. Most people don't understand all their pieces, right? That's why they go and import all these different libraries, right? They go off and they start a business, or they whatever, like all these different things that people do in their life to try and make themselves feel happy, but they don't understand their source code, right? The bug isn't in some other thing and trying to get a solution from outside. There's something in you that you need to change. Go and change your database connection string or your whatever it is. That's a really good metaphor, and I appreciate that everyone on this channel can actually relate to it. But that is how we should approach things, not just debugging in code, but debugging in life as a mindset.
Just to make sure Kim gets an answer for her question. So she wants to know about resource.
Yes. So I wrote down Free Code Camp for Kim.
So that's a website, right? freecodecamp.org.
Yep. So
also channel front end beginners.
Yes. So Kim, we have a channel specifically for beginners. And we also have a webinar that we run every Wednesday. Well, I don't run it. Shane and Frankie do on Wednesdays, and that's aimed at beginners. That's called Front End Beginners as a channel on Slack, and Beginner Wednesdays is the meetup group. So yeah, I definitely recommend coming to that if you're interested in learning some more of the ropes. But if you're more a senior developer, I would look into things like, I don't know, projects. Really build projects for yourself. If you already know how to code, it's more about architecture and the sort of stuff that we're doing today. I'd say look into building projects for yourself. And if you want some project ideas, ask. Come to the team. Take this chat app and build it out. Build a bot to it. Right. I know that someone here wanted to build a bot to it. And various other things. So yeah, I would say as a developer, focus on a senior developer or more advanced developer, focus on projects and small projects, not too big ones, because the smaller they are, the more achievable they are, and the more likely you are to have many of them, which looks good in your portfolio. So Dwayne asks, when do you think you will start the Thursday deep dive sessions? When people keep asking me questions like that. So the more people are interested, the more likely I am to do it. Awesome. Thank you so much for the recommendation. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for coming. Hopefully today was useful. I'm going to officially wrap up the webinar now, guys, but we can stay on to chat for as long as you guys want. But I'm going to stop recording for anyone on YouTube. So this concludes our week 4 of the webinar. Thank you for coming.